Good morning. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of The Future of Email Marketing, and my guest this morning, the other doc in email, Dr. Ada Bartlett, cheerful data scientist for email and founder of Operations Ally. Ada, we finally get to talk.
I'm so excited about this, Matthew. It's going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank
So
you.
do the company intro, and then we will completely ignore that and talk about something else for a minute.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk all things email and the techie bits and all sorts. I'm going to learn more about Campaign Genius. So Operations Ally, I think you did a great job in explaining it, but we're interested in helping email marketing organizations make the most of their data. Yeah. So there's tons of data out there in email marketing. And I think now, especially as Apple is changing what data is collecting, the reliability of that data, it's important to look at all of the data points that you have and see if there are insights that you can gather about your market segmentation and then people's behaviors and how can you use their behavior to improve your email marketing and improve your goals, your revenue on the end.
So top line question, a thing I've been curious to ask you is why email?
Oh, that's such a great question. It's been such an interesting journey. And it probably ties very much into why I'm curious and why I'm interested in chatting with you and about Campaign Genius. So email for me is this combination of data, really cool data stuff, but then has this HTML programming coding component. I think I am a web designer by, how should I put this? Like an interest, definitely not my professional skill set, but it's something I like to moonlight in. I know a lot about HTML and CSS, so I love that component. And I love the creative component. And then it's a bit different than websites in that you have these structured sequences of activities. So there's this process piece. So in short, there's all these fascinating things happening all together in email that you can collect data on. And so I just love learning about that. So before I decided to dive into email, I looked at processes of all different kinds. So manufacturing processes, medical processes. And so I find process in general to be fascinating, but then the fact that I get to do it from my home, not gonna lie, it's awesome. and that it integrates creative as well as data and just all these different things I find to be really cool, technical.
So when you go through the often time consuming dance of finally ending up with a new client saying, yes, help us.
Yes.
Where do they tend to be in terms of leveraging and getting the value that's there?
I find that they are I feel like this is the wrong word, but it's the only one that's coming to mind, but in a plateau place. So they are like, we've gotten ourselves as far as we can go. We have awesome professionals, but maybe those professionals are really great in developing, or they're really great at creative. And they may be creating weekly or daily, depending on their cadence and stuff, reports, but they just have this feeling that there's something more, and they don't know what to do with it, or how to get those insights. And so they usually find me through a variety of different ways, and I get really excited about, oh my gosh, you have all this data that you're not using. That's typically always what happens, things that you're not looking at, information about your customers' behavior and the trends of that behavior that you can use to come up with. Often we have conversations about like new offerings, or interesting segments, or groups of people that they can focus on, maybe sometimes segments and groups of people that they can focus a little less on, which sometimes goes over well, sometimes not so much, but interesting ways for people to get in touch with their subscribers, that they, so hopefully they can sell more stuff or achieve whatever their goal is.
Right. Okay. Let's take the slightly technical dive for a second. When you're working with that hypothetical new client, for you to get your hands on and work the cheerful magic with their data, there's a pragmatic getting the bits from them into your hands that has to be a bit of a lift and a bit of a mindset change for them. Yeah.
For them, yes, sometimes, but for the most part, the projects that work the best is when they give me the keys. So they'll add an account and they kind of let me go. I find that to be the best option. One, because I can do a bit of an audit. And that's when people really can understand sometimes how their database hygiene might have gone where there's missing data points, and that happens with everyone. So it's not
Yeah.
Like there's no shaming here, but just where, hey, this information exists for this subset of your subscribers. Where is it? Sometimes automations and moving data from one place to another, depending on how your database is set up. Sometimes those things break and people are not aware.
Yeah.
So the first part is really, the way that I like it is, you give me the keys, and obviously we sign all the appropriate documents, and then I can dive in and kind of show you where everything is and where things aren't. And then sometimes there's a cleanup process, and then we go from there. I think that's the most surprising thing sometimes for people, is it can take a little bit of time from like, okay, let's go to, okay, here's a nice little chart that summarizes stuff, because there is that, I need to understand, I need to clean it up sometimes, I need your help to clean it up sometimes, and that can take some time.
And I'll bet every client's completely distinct, right? It's drifted its own direction. It's not like pattern number 3, and it falls into one of those buckets.
Completely different. What they sell, how they bundle,
Yeah.
sometimes the sequence of the things that they're selling, their priorities also can shift. And sometimes that can really be reflected in who my main contact person is. Usually I'm working with someone in the marketing area, sometimes the email marketers themselves, sometimes, more general marketing folks. And if they're new to the company themselves, that's been really eye-opening. Sometimes they have a different vision for maybe the previous people there. But yes, it's very, very different. But at the same time, there are these core elements in email, right? Like you send messages, you send these emails, people open them. Well, maybe we know people open them. People click.
Talk about that.
People click. There are people buying, because I'm working with more established organizations, like they have historical records of people purchasing. And so those core pieces are there, but how they put those pieces together is very, very, very.
Makes sense. And we will get into the measurement and the Apple thing, but I'm determined not to just talk about that.
Yeah, I want to also talk about your OI. Your OI blog post I thought was fascinating. So
I went down a rabbit hole, and sometimes you just got to write to get it out of your head, right?
Yeah.
Are you named for Ada Lovelace?
No, actually, I'm named after my mother. Okay. Not a technical woman at all, but yeah, for whatever reason, when I was born, my dad decided I'd be named after my mom. And yeah, it's really fun though. Anytime I went to programming conferences or anything, right? That definitely popped up, but no. So thank you very much for noticing.
And for someone listening who's going, what are they talking about? Ada Lovelace is usually the short version of the name, is historically regarded as really the first programmer, although you could argue that Babbage, her hardware counterpart, was as well. Only legitimate daughter of Lord Byron, died at 36.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
It's a whole nother world we get to live in now.
Brilliant mathematician, and that edge case, or that fun boundary between math and programming, the land of algorithm. She was there exploring it really, really early on when it was all mechanical switches, right?
Yes, and it's amazing to see from that point to now, like at their core, the concepts are the same. Like they were algorithms then, they're algorithms now, but what we can do and how fast we can do it,
how fast we can do it, and how much we can, how much we can handle, like the capability.
Yes.
That now, when you're handling a data set from a customer, we get to get a little technical here. When you're handling a data set that you've gotten access, signed in, pulled over the wall from a customer, do you crunch and manage and work with that locally on cloud? Like technically speaking, where do you put the bits and bytes to learn more about them?
That's a cool question. It depends. It depends on the size. It depends on their computing resources. My personal preference, just for data security and all that good stuff, is to do as much on their servers and their places as possible. But sometimes people just don't have those kinds of capabilities. And then I will do that locally. But so if some people have their own cloud setup that can handle the number of computations, that matters. And sometimes people are really particular about that. So people can specify, like don't download anything, whatever their data sort of policies dictate, I will follow. And
Yeah.
so if that's the case, sometimes you have to update and
Yeah.
modify the algorithm to accommodate. So it really all depends.
And how I'm going to ask a tricky question.
Uh-oh.
How how useful are ESPs in what you do, and how often do you have to go outside the ESP to do what you do?
Wow. I think that this is a frustration. I'll reframe it, an opportunity in the industry, because I do think that there are lots of ways that ESPs can make the data more easily accessible,
Yeah.
to both the end user, like in their reporting, but also to someone with a bit more technical skills like I do in terms of their API endpoints and even exporting.
Yeah.
I think that can be a challenge. And I think it's a larger challenge than sometimes people anticipate in being able to get the data in the right format. And sometimes it can take a lot of manual
Yeah.
restructuring just to get it in a format before you can do anything
Yeah.
with it. So yeah, I think that that's a huge opportunity. But I also feel, and one of the things I'm excited about being in the email marketing world and how well and how warm I've been received in the email marketing world, is that people are starting to see that there are these opportunities, and there are ways for people to, if it was easier to get the data, then more people could use the data. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a important part.
Yeah.
Every ESP is so different. So
Yeah. Yeah. Having touched a lot of them, I agree. The focus of what does exist and for analytics and
yes,
data management tools in ESPs, to my
yes,
mind, tends to be um, sort of to make tomorrow a little better, not to make next week and next month a lot better.
yes,
It's like
yes.
it's the
That's a good take.
dashboard. It's the dashboard on the car. It is definitely not the full historical data dump that lets you build a better car.
Yes, no, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very the other perspective that I find frustrating in most ESPs is it's very email, not well, we love email, but very specific message focused,
Yeah.
the way that the data is structured as opposed to subscriber focused, or so it can take a lot of effort to massage the data or reorganize the data from looking at these individual messages that were sent to looking at Mary or Bob and their experience across multiple emails.
Now, delve into that a little bit, because I've got some wild and crazy long-term ideas for
Oh,
campaign genius in this domain. But when
oh,
you say email centric, do you mean um, campaign centric,
yes,
HTML? Okay, not because
yes,
not my read on it was that, how do I put this succinctly? Messages, the individual messages tend to be treated as a black box called a message, and there's almost no structure about what was in that message.
yes, that's also true. That's also true. So there's kind of 2 points
Yeah,
to it. It's kind of like how do people interact with the message
yeah,
is a typical way, but
yeah,
what was in it, because I think there's a lot of valuable stuff in there, and how many calls to action, how many links, oh my goodness, how
yeah,
complicated it can be to
yeah,
figure out which messages, or to summarize across messages, to group across messages per link,
yeah.
like I'm not even speaking, I'm getting so excited. But if I take a specific URL and I take a whole set of emails,
Yeah,
tell me how people were clicking on this particular URL across a set of emails. That can be extremely challenging.
yeah, yeah. And I'll feedback this. I'll feedback and agree with you and say the same thing a different
Yes,
way. If
yeah,
we don't have a structured understanding of the content that was in front of X million people, how are we going to start to get better at changing the actions of the next million people? Because at the end of the day, what they see and read is what they're acting on.
right, right,
They
right,
don't,
right,
they don't
right,
give
right,
a,
right.
they don't, the end recipient doesn't give a toot which ESP you sent it with. Doesn't matter to them at all. They don't know. They don't care.
For sure, 100%, 100%. And then even one way, and let me know if this lands or not. Like one way beyond that is that there are a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence. I have lots of thoughts about artificial intelligence and email in general, but artificial intelligence and just this idea of being able to predictively create copy or content that will work. And so in order to be able to make those decisions, to write models that can help you make those decisions in a nice way, you need to understand what was in the email and what was the purpose of the email, and how different emails have completely different
Yes.
outcomes or objectives, right?
Yeah.
So even if there is a link and there's a click, like depending on what you want them to do on that landing page,
Yeah.
the behavior is completely different. So it's definitely a huge opportunity for the content within the email, as well as the subscribers' behavior across a set of campaigns.
Across the set. Yeah, no, that's it. And this kind of dots back to Operations Ally as a business, if you will. Um, Proven and kind of unarguable that email's actually the most highest ROI digital marketing channel. It's the one asset that you own that can't get yanked away from you by a social media company or a change in a search algorithm or something like that. So refining and improving the game, dramatically refining, improving the game that of your email team would seem like that's a good idea for your business.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, as I've gotten to know the industry and the marketers in it, that they tend to be kind of chasing resources and so overworked that they have a hard time saying, no, this is worth investing in, not just keeping alive and treating as a cash register.
Yes, 100%. And I find that the organizations that I've been able to work with, the ones that I find coming to me are very almost they were built around email. So
there you
people that either might be e-commerce only, or a lot of really large online course platforms, people that sell online courses, online coaching.
Yeah,
that's going to be a big industry, and a lot of their revenue is driven exclusively through email. Yeah. So those types of people are obviously the ones that, at least for now, but I'm open to new opportunities, are the people that I've been working with.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Sort of email native.
Yes, email native, email primary. They're the ones that are recognized, and maybe because in some of those industries, people have been really burned by a Facebook change, or we're dropping some feature in social media platform, then you lose your entire following. I think in those circles, the importance of email, as well as the importance of doing email really well, definitely ties directly to their bottom line.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up the courseware niche, and you obviously must have customers in there, because right, that's I've got a course on a couple of platforms that I built years ago, and it doesn't get any TLC from me. It just kind of goes along, but a couple thousand people have taken it, so like, okay, that's kind of cool. But it's email that keeps me in the loop of, that's how someone promotes the bejeepers out of their course and gets more people signing up for their course, and then expands that to their next course. Like, you can see folks who make their living as online instructors building their list. There is the key word there, their list. And then really starting to to build a relationship and subscriber value and all that other stuff. This works.
It does. And that industry in general is a beautiful example of how email can be really, really powerful. And then also making small changes in your email sequence, or in the process of sending your emails, can have some really big impacts. And taking the extra time to also segment, from my experience in working in that industry, it's been really some major ahas.
Well, let's talk about one of my favorite topics a little more, which is you.
Wow.
You made the jump.
Yes.
From academia.
Yes.
To entrepreneur. In what looks like a very different space. Talk about that journey a bit.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I would say that I mentioned earlier, processes is what I've studied in school. It's what I taught. It's it's how I look at email and the world really now. So it's very grounded in that process perspective. Okay. But it was fascinating to, leave graduate school, finish, PhD, and start as a faculty member, and realize that, like, wow, this is great. My dad was a professor. My husband is a professor. My in-laws are professors. So I've got lots of academic.
Family trait.
Family traits. Yeah, exactly. But then to realize, okay, this isn't for me long term. I'm happy for them, and that this has been awesome. And I was really fortunate at the time when I was a faculty member to serve on the board of our regional small business center. And that was really what got my entrepreneurial sort of bug going, because I was meeting entrepreneurs and learning more about the world of small business and startup and those types of things, and realizing that people had really lovely ideas, and they were very passionate, but they needed some support in systems. They needed some support in process. Like people, not everyone thinks in terms of processes. So I found that that was a really cool opportunity, and that's when I transitioned from academia. That was my focus. So consulting, and helping people sort of take some of the lessons that you can learn from really successful, large process-oriented companies, Toyotas and McDonald's and the Walt Disney Worlds of the world. And how do you take these concepts and apply them on a much smaller scale? So I did that, and I worked with a variety of companies in a variety of different industries. And then it was more recently that I discovered, I really like the tech stuff. And for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, I really liked email. It was just the most fun projects were the ones I got to work on email.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was kind of how I made this transition. And then I discovered that, oh, wow, there's like a whole industry of people that are really passionate and focused on this area. So I jumped in with both feet.
Nice community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, lovely. Compared to, I'm an engineer. I'm a proud engineer, but it's very, very different going to an engineering conference, at least in my experience, than going to an email conference.
Have you been to a live email conference?
Not a live one yet, but even the online ones are lovely.
Yeah, because like Matthew Vernat, who I think we both know, has a Canadian specific email. Some would be in your backyard, but I only got to 2 live conferences before the great interrupt of pandemic hit, but they're just as fun live as you would think, having done them virtual. It's just as tight knit a community and mutually supportive a community as you could ask for. And you're talking to a guy who loathed live conferences for many, many years. I actually can't wait to go to the next live email conference. Like, oh, that's going to be so cool.
Yeah, everyone seems like they're friends and they know each other. It's just really a beautiful thing. It's really, really, really
quite it's a nice thing. And insert plug here for Only Influencers. If you're listening to this podcast and email is your thing and you're not an Only Influencers member, onlyinfluencers.com, go apply. We can't wait to meet you and see what we can do to help you. Insert email, insert spirit of email here. Well, it is a shift though from academia to entrepreneur land. Like my academia time didn't overlap with my other industries, plural time, but there were points. In fact, one of the reasons I live in the town I live in is that I was when I left big software company, I was like, I really miss teaching. I want to go back to that. And I do miss teaching, but I don't have the patience to be in academia. Honestly,
it's a completely different set of skills, a completely different set of priorities. How you think about the world, for sure. It's different. It's valuable. Fantastic things come from academic institutions.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I'm grateful for them. But I'm happy that I've made this career transition.
Good for you. Do you find the difference in collegial and team work works better for you, or are there things you miss about live classroom, live colleagues, live students, committee meetings? I'm sure you miss a ton.
Oh yeah, those definitely. Those are the top. No, I don't miss those at all. I feel like the one thing that if I were to make a connection, the work that I do now is almost like when I was able to teach elective courses. So people are there on purpose and they've chosen to be there and they're very interested in the results and they're very engaged. I found that one of the more frustrating teaching was, a great experience for me. I enjoyed it. But one of the more frustrating experiences was when it was a required course, because there's that extra let's do it. So what I love about
is Dr. Barlatt, is this going to be on the final?
Yeah, exactly.
Just want to smack them.
And I feel like I deserve these 3 points. That is definitely that was definitely an interesting.
Now I come from a family of teachers as well, and I hear through the
Yes.
grapevine that parents have become much more of a pain in the backside
Yes.
in the last decade or so. And I'm thinking, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have been good at that either. Like, yeah, so
Yeah.
Timmy gets a C because Timmy did C work. Next conversation, please.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even at the university level where I
Yeah.
taught, I didn't have too many interactions with parents, thankfully, but it definitely happens.
Mm.
And it's definitely
Which is to me is bizarre. It's like,
very,
again, you're supposed to go stand on your own 2 feet and learn stuff. Bye, see, yeah,
yeah.
we'll send a check, but bye, see.
Yeah, I don't know, it's an interesting
Yeah.
time.
There you go. Succinctly put, it's an interesting time. Now, Waterloo is actually, I don't know if you know how legendary Waterloo is in the software world.
Yes, oh, very much
Yeah.
aware, for
Oh
sure.
yeah, because I spent a good almost a decade at a big software company just south of here, and we hired
Okay.
Waterloo grads like
Yeah.
crazy. But we hired Waterloo math grads
Yes.
back in the '90s, not software grads. It was like
Oh,
it was
interesting.
the priority. The hiring priority was math grads. Like they had the high level thinking skills,
Right.
and like this language, that language, these APIs. Yeah, you can learn
Figure
that,
out this.
right?
Yes, 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 yes.
And yeah, some brilliant folks out of there, and BlackBerry was kind of born out of
Yes. Was
Waterloo as well.
definitely, definitely. People here are very proud
Yeah,
of that. It's interesting. So I went to University of Michigan. That's where I went to graduate school, and I can remember learning
go
about
blue.
the job. Go blue. Yes, that's right. Learning about the job opportunity, and to be honest, and I guess I'll out myself, I had never heard of Waterloo. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
let's see what happens. And it was really lovely coming here and to learn of this tradition and where all of the alums are. It's that not too many Canadian institutions have that
brand outside Canada.
say yes, have that sense of alumni loyalty that I think is
Oh,
very much bred in the United States.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there isn't a lot of collegiate, like there's collegiate sports here in Canada, but it's not the same level as
yeah.
is the US. And I feel like that gives a different vibe to it. But Waterloo definitely has this, protecting its own. We're going to, come back and recruit no matter where in the world
Yeah,
its alumni
yeah.
have gone. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
MIT, but colder.
That's that's true. How people do describe it. I do not think MIT describes themselves of the Waterloo of the United States, but you never
No.
know. Perhaps.
Well, and Waterloo shouldn't either. But you're I hadn't thought about that, but you're right about, and it fits the lovely innate modesty of the many Canadians I've worked with over the years, that their universities would be kind of like, you're like, oh gosh, and not do that rabid loyalty thing that U.S. universities do. Now, you grow up in the U.S. You grew up in the U.S., not
I
Canada.
grew up in the U.S. Yes, yes. Moved to Canada for this opportunity, and
Yeah,
my husband is a faculty member. We met in Michigan and both
yeah.
moved here to be faculty members. And so, yeah, Waterloo has been the catalyst for our Canadian experience.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and Ada and I have a Venn diagram overlap because I'm married to a proud Michigan grad, so I was required to say "Go Blue" as soon as
That's right.
she
That's
mentioned that.
right.
And the Northwest where I live is the largest alumni cluster of University of Michigan grads outside of Michigan itself.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Seattle area is like can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Michigan grad.
I have friends from Michigan that live out there, so that's interesting. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's kind of, and it's also a great school. Were you at Waterloo during let's call it Blackberry's precipitous decline?
Oh, yes. I'll put it that way. Yes, it was definitely not the high years of BlackBerry when I was here, but yeah,
Tough go. Yeah.
yeah. It's an
Side,
interesting.
Sideswiped by Paradigm.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's interesting. But it was interesting also that I think Canadians in general are very loyal to
Yeah.
Canadian companies. And so there's still, I think even now to this day in Kitchener Waterloo for sure, there's still lots of people that are very fond of the organization. And it's
Well,
probably
I carried more than one crackberry, as everybody used to call them, and I mean we can actually connect this quite directly. I would
oh,
argue that what made the BlackBerry was email,
ooh,
and
I
what
can see that.
what killed the BlackBerry was email.
Ooh, I see the making. What? Talk to me more about the killing.
Well, BlackBerry's handling of the making of. For those of you who never held a BlackBerry in your hands, it was a beautifully designed device where you could type
Yes.
on physical keys. Gosh, I miss those with your thumbs. And
Right.
what got the BlackBerry on hips across business, business world everywhere was
Yes,
staying on top of their email.
for
'Cause
sure,
it
for sure.
wasn't it wasn't really texting hadn't become even remotely a thing you did then. I mean, and it was a hijack of sideband from cellular control towers anyway. But BlackBerry came along. You're like, I can have my email in my pocket. Where do I sign up? And so, bam, everyone's carrying those things. But if
Yes.
you look back at it historically, you might have done this. The way they handled HTML email was kind of squidgy, awfully proprietary, and eh, it
Ah,
was not great. Um,
okay.
and so iPhone comes along and it puts two things in your pocket. One, web browser.
Yes.
Two, oh, this actually looks like email. Um, and
Mm,
and a million other things. It's the Swiss Army knife device.
right.
And Android obviously following much the same paradigm. Yeah, and BlackBerry was
Yeah.
no, this is what you do is this thing. Maybe they stuck too much to email being the only thing
Mm,
where Jobs and iPhone said, anything you want and someone will build an app for it.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, and I do remember that the HTML email on BlackBerry was a pain in the butt. Um,
Right.
and it didn't look good, honestly. Plain text emails, you're like, great, no, 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 and you
Yeah.
preferred it on a BlackBerry, but HTML, richer, more, a little more media to the
Okay.
email, not a super great experience. Yeah,
Interesting. That would be an interesting
yeah, wouldn't it?
history piece. But I'm following you. It makes perfect sense. It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
It also
And
made.
so
Go ahead.
for and forgive me if I haven't listened to the episode where you've done this, but I'm super curious. You've mentioned your experience in big software companies. How did you get to email, and how did you get to Campaign Genius? I'm curious.
I will try to keep this brief. As I said the other day, and I think Skip Fedura's face fell. The first job I had with email in the title was in 1990.
Very nice.
90. So I was at Microsoft for almost 9 years, 89 to 98. And that was in the days of corporate LAN. Well, corporate LANs were starting to spread, Novell NetWare, taking off
Okay.
really fast. Um, and email sort of rode into companies on the back of LANs
Okay.
and personal computers, obviously, as well.
Right.
But Microsoft had a surprisingly good Mac Mac email program.
Interesting.
They did, yeah, this really terrific Mac email program, and it was a Mac server as well as Mac client,
Okay.
not Windows, right? V1
Yeah.
of Excel was on Mac, by the way. Um, and then Microsoft bought a company in Canada, Vancouver.
Yeah.
I think they were called Consumer Software, who'd built a quite good and taking off like a rocket um, LAN email program for the PC world.
Okay.
Because Microsoft could see, okay, this email thing is going to go somewhere, so they bought this Canadian company. I had with some people I worked with in tech support, because I started in tech support there, right? Like it's like starting like a janitor. Um, Seriously, but we'd seen the email thing starting to grow on the Mac side. We'd heard the rumors about maybe we'll acquire a PC, Windows DOS uh, email company.
Okay.
So I'd moved into management, and I said, okay, guys, here's the deal. I will write, because nobody likes writing, you know, internal documents and proposals, and those of us from academia are like, this
It's like,
isn't
oh,
right. I
this is
said,
not so bad.
I will write the why we should have an email support department separate from Excel and Word and stuff like that. I'll write it. Here's the caveat. I want to run the team. And they're like, heck yeah, great. So we
Oh,
pitched
great.
it. Management was like, yeah, that makes sense. So boom, there we were with this email support team. And about 2 months later, the acquisition of that Canadian company happened.
Cool.
Well, okay, so one last little personal story. I was at home on a Saturday. My phone rings.
Okay.
Matthew Dunn. Hi, this is Mike Maples. Name doesn't mean anything to you, but senior vice president, right hand guy to Bill Gates at the time.
Whoa.
I about swallowed the phone.
Yeah.
the I'm like, yes, sir. What can I do for you? The acquisition was go all the acquisition stuff was going along with that Vancouver company, and
Sure.
the founder, husband and wife founder, she went, oh wait a minute, no one said what's going to happen to our support team, and support was her baby. She
Ah,
was like, she almost put a hold on the acquisition because no one was paying attention to their support folks. So Mike Maples is like, you go to Canada, okay, no problem. Boom,
wow.
up the highway to Vancouver to meet the really cool support team who had been ignored in all the acquisition discussion. The poor guys. I walked in, they all looked like they were waiting for me to come in with a sword. So I kicked out the Microsoft corporate dweeb who was talking to him, and I said, "All right, guys, what do you know? What do you want to know? How do we get through this? Because this is not going to run without you. You are in the
Right.
driver's seat here. You actually know how to make this thing work."
Ah,
Great bunch of people, great bunch of people. So, but that was, that's 30 years ago. 30 years
that's
ago.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I was involved in email from a technical perspective really
Yeah.
early on. Microsoft in 89, 90 actually ran everything on a Unix based, Xenix based email system. We would have the Mac guys would have a separate kind of crappy PC just for corporate email.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was actually part of the culture. This fascinated me because I could see that email was a medium, not not just an app. Um, People referred to each other by their email name in in front of the at sign. Oh, I got such and such from Bill G. That was the verbiage.
Interesting.
And if I said Mike M, Mike Maples,
Yeah.
oh, Mike M.
Oh,
Isn't that
wow.
fascinating?
That is
I was
fascinating.
like, this is powerful. And then you could see the email overload started a little bit early. The
Yeah.
email overload we've all got, right? It started a little bit early in the company communications there. And you could see the patterns really early on of awful use of email for communication versus effective use of email for communication. Like I think I taught an internal class, like, look, here's how to use this medium,
Yeah. Excellent.
effectively. Here's how not to use it effectively. Right. And we had the problem. We had the problem of the backwards thread problem. You're like, catch
Uh,
up with this. Read backwards and try to make sense. Read backwards in chunks and try to make sense of it. What a stupid design, right?
yes, 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 yes. Like, oh, lucky me. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. So you're working at Microsoft.
Mhm.
This acquisition happens.
Mhm.
And then what happens?
Oh, I bounced. I had 13 jobs in 9 years there. So I did a lot of
Oh,
others.
wow.
Yeah, it's a great learning opportunity. And
Amazing.
I did the PhD while working at Microsoft. Um,
Interesting.
it's not trivial, but I have a wonderful wife.
Yeah.
So I did. Long story short, I did a ton of other things and started doing almost a serial entrepreneur thing because I wanted to stay in the town I'm in and have my family be a priority, which they are.
Yes.
Um, Campaign Genius sort of came out of a project that we did a few years back, building a web-based video maker. Um,
Oh,
yeah, it was cool. I'm like, wow, because we've done a ton of video stuff, and I said this video is going to start to be more and more important. You can just see it coming
right.
because that's my field, media, and built a web-based video maker. And then we looked at the market and said, I don't think we've got the muscle as a bootstrap. I don't think we've got the marketing muscle to actually make this thing go. There were all of a sudden competitors popping up, with VC backing. behind them. But in the course of figuring out how to make video sort of almost live and on the fly,
yes,
I kept doing things in email, and I'm like, why are we not doing real-time content in email? The plumbing has been there for 20 years.
right, right,
Right? The plumbing has been there for 20 years. And I looked through my inbox like nothing. And
right.
why is email alone among digital channels so obdurately text and copy centric when everything else has gotten more and more and more visual?
Great question. Very great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't satisfied with the answer. So, so Campaign Genius was like, you know what? We could build this because like the standards are all there. There are literally billions of email clients that are wired to do real time content already.
Right.
Huge, like just huge opportunity. And it was one of those, don't do this, it's stupid, build it, and then start figuring out where it fits in the market. I know you're supposed to go out and
I hear you.
user input and all that other stuff. So so slay me.
All right, it's okay. It's working for you. I think that's great.
But I understood the technical fundamentals that were there, and then we had to learn a ton more about the actual plumbing and wiring and stuff like that. Having spent a good couple or 3 years on building that, I have a much better bead on the impacts and the not impacts of what Apple's proposing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, with Pixels. And here's my one riff of that on the actual thing in Apple thing in relation to real time. I think email marketers frickin' deserve this one because they've had the capability to do more visual, more real time, more interesting things in email for 20 years, and frankly haven't done it. And the only thing they've used that capability for is for their own benefit as marketers, right? The Pixel to give me metrics, the Pixel to give me open rates and stuff like that. The fact that Apple's move will have almost no visible impact for recipients is kind of like, we kind of deserved that one, guys, because we didn't do anything that made that difference to them. I don't think anybody's going to cry, oh, my countdown timers don't work. So we can dispense with those. I think a lot of other things are actually not going to get broken based on the technical research we've been doing since Apple's announcement. Like I don't think it's actually as catastrophic as you might think. I suspect IP-based location stuff is out.
Right. Yes.
Correlating opens and clicks is going to be different. But it's like, this is starting to look like maybe 10, 12% impact in terms of our broad tool set and Campaign Genius. So, not that bad. Not that
fantastic.
bad.
So there's still this capability for delivering real-time content.
Even if Apple did the most draconian thing that they could, and we've sort of run the different scenarios. All right, what if they completely ignore all cache headers and just go one time, suck it up, here you go.
Yes.
We're doing a webinar tomorrow, Gene Jennings and
yes, I will be there.
And we'll talk about this in more depth tomorrow. But wow, okay, rabbit hole. One of the problems with email is that the mental model is too strong.
Elaborate, please.
If I say mail,
yes,
you know exactly how that works, right?
Yes.
You put a message in an envelope and it goes to someone and they open it and we're done.
Right.
And email implies that the same thing happens.
Yeah.
It's not actually how it works. It's mostly how it works, but it's not fully how it works. And the difference between those two things is awfully, awfully big. But so when someone's thinking in terms of email production, email marketing production, right, larger scale, like your clients tend to do, right? I'm pretty sure that mental model tends to assert itself unconsciously. And okay, well now everything's going to be, in terms of real-time content and pixels, everything's going to be scooped up all at once at the moment of send. Right? I mean, fair description of the mental model?
Yeah, that's fair description of like where people.
There is no one moment of send in a scaled email program.
That's true.
It takes time.
Hundreds of thousands of millions of messages. Yeah. Of course.
It takes time, and emails are not written in a scaled email program. Emails are not written, composed, assembled 5 minutes before they go out the door.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Right. So more practically, it looks more like manufacturing. Hey, operations girl.
Yes, yes,
It
yes.
looks more like a manufacturing things. Like it, I think the average is two. Last time I read it, 2 weeks. I don't know what your experience
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Like,
That makes sounds great. Yeah,
right, the
that's
planning stages in the
huge amounts of
we're
time.
going to put this in there, and we're going to have this product and this message. Like huge amounts of time going on there. The
Yes,
thing about real time content that remains that remains exactly the same mechanism, even if you keep the all sent at once mental model for a minute.
yeah.
Like you can change your mind about stuff at the last minute, which is pretty
Oh,
flippin' valuable
that's
in that daisy chain of
yes,
production. It's like it's to me a metaphor. It's a bit like what just in time brought to manufacturing.
for sure, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Flipping valuable is, I think, an understatement.
yeah,
For that's why I was so excited to chat with you and learn more about Campaign Genius, because I see huge opportunities for even right now I have a client where we were planning, the calendar was set in advance, a year in advance, right? And life happens,
yeah,
and now the launch that we were planning for July 9th has been moved to the 19th, right? And so that has lots of, for how the system works right now in this production process,
yeah,
there's a lot of moving pieces that need to go back and be fixed.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so the ability to be able to change that on the fly in a more in an easier way, I think for some people makes sense. Like, it hasn't been sent yet. Like, why can't we just change it? And they're not realizing this larger production process. So I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
yeah,
larger production process indeed.
yeah,
And then change the mental model for a second. Say
yeah,
this campaign is actually going to be sended
yes,
intentional over
yeah,
time.
yes, 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 yes,
Can we learn and refine
yes,
fast from the initial part of the send and
yes,
change the value proposition? Let's call it 80/20 just for the sake of discussion.
sure, sure.
Can we learn enough from the first 20% to
Right.
maximize the remaining 80%?
That's interesting. And what I find fascinating about that ability is that the message itself doesn't need to change. So, like, in the work in the ESP doesn't change. It's
Right.
only the work with whatever is connected to this real time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
this
mean,
real
you can think of real time content, campaign genius, movable link, or whatever else. I mean,
Yes,
metaphor, but
yes,
kind of a VM, a virtual machine for
yes.
messages.
I love that. That is an extremely powerful capability. Like, that is just fantastic. I think
Well,
it's super, super cool. And for me, it wasn't until we've met through these Only Influencers Thursday conversations, and so I was like, oh yeah, he's fabulous. But then it was only during the Festival of Email demo I was just like, wait, what? What is this?
well, but you just a very sophisticated user, but you just
Yes,
validated what I said about mental models.
yes, 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 yes.
Don't think that email works this way because mail
Yeah,
is it's quite a powerful mental model, right?
yeah,
Send, done. That's my shorthand for send, done. It's not how email works.
yeah.
It
Well,
is,
there's that part, but for me, it was more the flexibility, because there are often people, especially, how do I say this in a succinct way? But sometimes people in this, there's this larger production process that we've established. Sometimes
yeah,
people within the process are not fully aware of the preceding steps and the following steps from where they are.
yeah,
And so to give people more time to make decisions, and to adapt and to adjust what they're doing, is a really powerful, powerful, powerful tool. I can't tell you how many times there have been panics and things have
yeah.
happened because the train has started leaving the station. Here I go with another analogy, but this long process has started, and someone in the middle is like, well, can we just wait, or can I decide later? And it's just like,
No,
no.
right, right,
And
right.
so there's that huge capability of,
So,
that the technology exists to enable that efficiently, I think is.
so even post Pixel Geddon, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to change your mind and affect the message after send.
Yes. Yeah.
After and I like
After.
I'll have to use the 80/20 thing because it's like it's not a bad handle on. It's like to be able to change your mind after 20% of people have opened it. And maybe you
Yeah.
start doing your statistical sampling more off Android for the time being.
Yeah.
The scenario we run that I'm like, this is what we're going to work with, guys. Is the most pessimistic, like no cache control, and frankly, other inbox providers following suit with Apple. Like, let's
Mhm.
assume, for the sake of discussion,
Yeah.
that everyone's going to start doing this. Like, cool, performance just went through the roof. Yay! Why? Local
Mm.
device cache can't get any better than that in terms of performance on open. So thanks
Yeah.
Apple for taking my bandwidth bill. Apple's going to be caching 47% of the world's email content. That's
Wow.
not a trivial lift.
Wow. Not anywhere near. Not anywhere near. Oh, well, good. Yeah, that's exciting for them and their engineers and their, yeah, that's an interesting.
What's your sort of personal first, professional second reaction to that proposed move about the handling of pixels? Personal first.
Personal. I'm an Android user. I do have an Apple device.
Right, but you understand the privacy side
Yes. The
presentation of it.
the privacy side. I find that personally, I feel like I'm like, how do I want to say this? I feel like in sometimes the current campaign, this Apple campaign for privacy, I think in some ways it's a feel good, like, oh wow, yeah, everything should be private, but there's something about it, and it's probably why I loved your OI article, that I'm like, oh, there's something about this that just is sort of rubbing me the wrong way. Like, it's not like, is this really to the user's benefit in 100%? I'm not sure. There's just something about it, especially the beautiful commercials. They are fabulous. I enjoy watching all the new Apple commercials on privacy, and you're just like, yeah. And I see how it's presented in a way that for people that are not maybe technically educated or interested in the technical details of how their data is collected, like, oh wow, that's exactly what I want. This is what I want.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that you're just like, and then as I read more and more professionally, I'm like, oh yeah, there's like really big opportunities, I'll put it that way, that Apple is creating for itself.
Yes, they are.
In being the holder of data and the gatekeeper of its users' data, who tend to be very loyal. Like the Apple users that I know in my family personally are extremely loyal to this company. So it's interesting.
I'm actually kind of a diehard Apple guy, even though I had to become quite expert with Windows.
Yes.
I've just always found that ecosystem works for me,
Okay.
iPhone included.
Yes.
So I find it one, it's consistent with Apple's corporate DNA to make
Mm-hmm.
this move. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel like it's made up. It's like, that Tim Cook has always said this, done this, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're not getting credit, maybe more credit than they deserve for the
Mm-hmm.
move. Ben Thompson uses the term strategy credit. It's sort of when it's easy for a company to do something and it's really great for their brand and they probably would have done it anyway, but they
Yeah.
kind of get a halo. They get a halo out of it. I'm taking care of my privacy. It's also one of the most deft branding shifts of digital getting up on the plateau, historically speaking, getting up on the plateau. I think we'll look at this in business case studies in 5 years and go, oh
Yeah.
wow, is that smart? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're the white knight brand wise,
Oh, for sure, for sure,
right?
for
For
sure.
consumers, you picture the scenario of someone going, oh, I'm going to get my first smartphone,
Yeah.
right? Who's got the brand association with privacy?
Right, 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 right.
Apple, right?
For
So
sure.
really smart move, whether or not it is, whether or not it's meaningful privacy, whether or not, and here's a key thing, whether or not they get different permission than what they're giving
Mm-hmm.
everybody else. I mean, as I was working on that OI post you mentioned,
Yeah.
I took a minute, went to apple.com, ran the toolbar plugin that says what's running on this site. I'm like, oh, look, a bunch of tracking pixels on your website. Methinks the lady doth protest too much or something like that. So
Yes.
it's not just as simple as
For
making
sure.
it out to be. But frankly, most consumers don't care.
No. no, no.
What do you think? How's email? Let's assume like a relatively pessimistic scenario. Oh, no more open rates and so on. What's going to happen to marketing decision processes? What's going to happen to deliverability,
Oh
visibility? What's going
goodness.
to happen to send time optimization? Like, what are you thinking so
Oh,
far?
I wow. Okay. Well, I feel like what I wish is that people can refocus our energies and our efforts on um, those moments of conversion, and refocusing our efforts on optimizing the parts of the process that will actually, how do I want to say this? But the parts of the process that actually are closer to the conversion point. I think that sometimes optimization is great. As an idea, I'm all for optimization. My PhD was all about optimization. I'm all for that. I feel that there are other parts of the process that we can put our efforts in and increase the overall effectiveness of the process. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
So I'm curious if where the bottleneck truly is in the system, because
Yeah.
only when you optimize the
Yeah.
bottleneck will you
Yeah.
actually achieve, or can you achieve an even larger and a larger lift and a larger benefit. And so I think that this challenge, this opportunity that this shift is bringing us, is making us all go back and think, well, what did I really need from the opens? I don't live and work a lot in the newsletter world, so I understand how for them it might be particularly stressful. But I feel like even there's probably other options that they can look at in list size and other things. But for where I live and work mostly, it's all revenue and sales, and there are so many more steps after an open that
Yeah.
has to occur,
Yeah.
that we can look at, and that we're still going to be able to collect information. I think the other thing that's really going to be powerful, and this one happened too, Google delayed their third-party
2 years.
pixel,
Yeah.
their third-party cookie stuff that they were looking at. But
Yeah.
I think that this is an interesting opportunity to see what first-party data we can collect. I find that, at least again, in the world that I'm living in, and the clients that I have, people are pretty happy to share information, as long as you can say how it's relevant to the service that you're providing. And so there's a lot of first-party stuff that we can collect and then use to make decisions. So that's
I agree. I agree. I agree with everything you said. Very and good insights. I honestly hope people at some high skilled email marketing programs are listening. You know, so call Ada Operations Desk Allied. Seriously, there's a big opportunity, I would
yes,
argue, for email, the email piece of the marketing spectrum inside
yes.
companies in dealing with the shift that we're branding with Apple and Pixel for now.
Mm-hmm.
If the email department called themselves the first party marketing department instead of the email department,
Ooh, that would be interesting.
it's actually probably a better label.
It probably is when you put
And
it that way. Yeah.
and if you think in terms of, uh, I studied categories a good bit when I was working on my dissertation for some
Yes.
reason. Category labels tell a lot, and email marketing is the label is the technology of the channel,
Yeah.
which tells you
Yeah.
it's a bit immature,
Mm,
right?
that's interesting. I would like you to write a blog post about that. What would, so a more sophisticated category or label is speaking more to
Well,
outcome or
if you think about it, your email marketing department, and I am totally making this up as I go along. Email marketing, email
good stuff
marketing,
comes out then. Yeah.
right? So the good stuff comes out. Email marketing says the focus of this work is the technical channel itself.
Yes.
And then you go, oh, but they're email recipients, or that's my list. Okay, good way to lump them together and define them in terms of their relationship to the technology. They're on your list. If you said it's my first party marketing department, then you go, oh, so you guys handle email,
Yeah.
texting,
Yeah.
oh, personalization of the website, that should fall under you as well. Ah,
Yeah.
It's a really different department. Why? And it's
Oh,
defined in relation to, it's defined in terms of the relationship to that other
yeah,
party,
yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes,
Not
yes.
in terms of the technical channel.
And what a powerful thing it would be to be able to coordinate SMS, email, and
Mhm.
website personalization. I feel like that's a frustration point for lots of organizations because they are these siloed, really crucial transfer points of information
And
and experience.
siloed in terms of, typically siloed in terms of, our label is our technical definition, right? I was a CIO for X number of years, and like you see the same meta pattern going
Yeah,
on. And just looking at the labels, the
yeah,
category structure will actually sometimes tell you about the maturity
of the
of the
organ. I
thing,
love that.
right? So
That's
if you're the first party marketing department, when you go and say, we need the data about sales, it's a very different argument about how important that is.
yeah.
It's not the email guys need. It's like, no, this is the first party
Yeah,
relationship. And maybe there's a better name than first party, but the relationship marketing, like there's a
yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
category, but a category defined in terms of that other party, not in terms of the technical channel to the
I
party.
love that.
Yeah,
That's really powerful stuff.
net from my every email marketer I know is, overworked, undergunned,
Yes,
um, and frankly, they don't get the priority, the organizational priority that their ROI merits.
yeah.
But trying to win that argument by talking about email marketing being important, we've had 20 years to do that, and nobody seems to have made big strides at it. So maybe we've got to redefine the thing a bit.
Yeah, that's true. As someone whose degrees are in a field called industrial engineering, I hear you on that. That marketing, like the language versus the impact. So yeah, I know. I think it's very powerful.
So here's a wrap up, because I've already monopolized an hour of your time, which has been awesome fun. I can't wait for us to hang out together at a conference over a beer.
Yeah, no, this has been fantastic for sure.
Um, how do you find? Talk about the cultural and sort of stylistic differences between working with marketers where you were working with more engineers before.
Oh yeah. Well, I find that the first thing, and actually I really love it, is language. And it was funny, my husband and I are starting to plan a home renovation. And so we're sending out contracts and looking for contractors and stuff. And that's really the distinction that I've learned, how our careers have gone in different paths. Because the words that he would use or how he would lay out the message to look for the bid or the contract is just completely different than how I would describe it. I've over the years I've found to use the least technical, the most accessible words possible, and how I design. I'm definitely not a copywriter, but how I design the look of the text. Instead of one long block of text, there's lots of bullet points, and how it's very scannable and things. So I think that is one big distinction. How people communicate amongst themselves, the words that they choose, how they structure it, the emphasis of how things look, I think is really important. The other big focus, it's a bit different. I think this would be more of academia compared to where I am now in marketing, is optimal versus incrementally better. I find that in academia, especially where I've come from it, everything you were looking for, it was optimal. You were always looking for the optimal
Ideal.
solution,
Yeah.
and this provably optimal solution. And now where I work and I live is, if this year can be better than last year, and then the next year can be better than that.
This campaign can be better than that campaign, right?
Exactly. If this campaign can be better, if this week can be better. So it's much more of an incremental improvement. And maybe the time that was invested, heck, it took me 5 years to do my degree to optimize production planning, scheduling, right? So if you can get something a little bit better in 2 weeks, then that has a lot more value than waiting for the optimal solution in 5 years. So,
well, to be fair to education, the measure of its effectiveness comes about 20 years later. So it's a bit of
sure.
a bit of
For sure, it's a different thing.
yeah.
But to compare and contrast at at
Yeah.
the high levels. Those
Yeah.
those are big
Oh,
distinctions.
fascinating. What your husband teaches what?
He's in the same discipline, so he teaches. So we met in engineering school. He teaches about decision support systems. He teaches about like mathematical modeling, algorithms, optimization, that kind of stuff. So
Oh, wow. Yeah, the home remodel is going to be a darn interesting process.
there's going to be many spreadsheets.
Ah, yes, there you go. But I'm sure the project, unlike most remodel projects, will probably run on time.
Yeah, and definitely budget. I feel like that's one of our claims to fame for our wedding is that on time and on budget. We
We
made it
did
all work
two
out.
we did two major remodels of our house, and the first project was on time and on budget,
Nice.
and the second one was a cluster. The first one was like a year of planning,
Yeah.
and the second one was, oh crap, we got to do this, but little kids, dogs, all that other stuff. So, so it's like if you're doing a home remodel, the more time you spend planning, the better the thing's
The
gonna
result.
go. The other thing was, I was working on site in this office during the first one, and then I was doing a corporate job in the second one, and that like right there. Hey, do you want the thing to be blue? Like, no, we picked the paints. Like, see the
Yes.
bucket, put that paint on, right? Right. Equals, more days, fewer days on the schedule.
For sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. Those are interesting lessons that I think can apply in lots of
Yep.
different ways in
Yeah.
terms of investing time and staying on top of the job and
All those
paying
stuff.
attention to being close to it is really valuable insights.
Well,
So
Ada,
yes,
how much fun was this?
this is a ton of fun, Matthew. I hope to come back
Oh
another
yeah, yeah,
time, or
yeah, for sure. And we will
we'll chat.
definitely have converse at a live conference and probably multiple Zoom calls
Yes,
before then. You guys are still a bit locked down in Ontario,
we
pandemic
are
wise.
a bit
Yeah,
further behind, but vaccines are rolling out.
yeah.
The process is unfurling, and the border should be open officially sometime in July. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I literally see Canada from my office window. Like no joke, I see peaks in Canada right through that window.
Wow! Wow!
But it's had a real dampening effect on where I live to have
Yes,
the border
close.
shut. Yeah, it's like,
Yes,
no, we don't like that. So yeah, we'll,
yeah,
we'll we'll get through this thing. Well,
yeah,
my delightful guest today has been Dr. Ada Barlatt, the
yes.
cheerful data scientist and founder at Operations Ally. Ada,
Thank you
thanks
so
so
much.
much for the time and the insights.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.